right, sure. Well, thanks you both for joining us for Conversation Health Literacy. I'm Adrienne, I'm with the library, and it's my pleasure to introduce Shutdown Curtis, certified life coach and the leader of our workshop today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining. I'm excited. It's like a cozy little group we have today. We're going to talk about conversations and how we take ourselves through conversations, a big part of our life, right? I'm going to share my screen. I know I have it open. I think it's here. And then I need to go here. And here. I hope my computer doesn't freak out. No, it looks good. Can you see it? Okay, perfect. Yeah, let's say, I mean, we all have a lot of conversation skills, right? But sometimes a little reflection, a little going back and a little bit of like shining it out doesn't hurt. And I'm sure a lot of things that I say today, you already have it with you. But it's just, let's make it a conversation actually here too. Let's make it a discussion that allow us to kind of like have a collaborative session, if you don't mind. Of course, if you are comfortable, this session is being recorded. So if you're comfortable, it would be wonderful if you contribute as much as you feel comfortable. So we want to talk about the conversation goals and structure. It's just like looking at it a little bit more objectively. So when we are having our conversations, it's like a little bit more, there is more clarity in it, a kind of like, it's not as subjective. I mean, conversations are subjective, but we want to bring a little bit of objectivity to it as well. It's like about like, what does the Speech Act say? Of course, a very simplified model of it. And then how is like our verbal and nonverbal communications. So let's just dive in to see how we want to have a little chat today together, if that's good. Well, like I mentioned, conversations are a big part of our life. We have conversations all day, either with ourselves or with other people or with our pets. I have a lot of conversations with my pet. But, you know, it can gradually change the course of our lives, or even like one conversation can be very important. You know, when you wanted to have the last decision-making conversation about a big travel, about marriage, about partnership, about buying something big, you know. So some of the conversations are really important, and we want to be mindful when we are in that conversation. We want to make sure that we are bringing most of ourselves into that conversation, to be present, to get the best out of it. We do communicate verbally and non-verbally. See, like every one of us, when we talk, we use our body consciously or subconsciously. But it's very important. And there are research studies that the non-verbal communication actually has a lot more impact than the verbal communication. And that's because basically, I think I have it in the next slide. It's in the next slide. That's because we have this interoception system that takes and absorbs the message from the environment, and we will talk about it. But overall, what's a conversation? It's like, you know, there is a source here, like let's say like if we get to talk, if we get to converse, I'm the source here, I'm sending a message, I'm encoding that message together, you know, like I'm putting words together, my thoughts together to see what I want to convey. And then through this channel that you are listening, ours is like we are in this meeting through Zoom. It's a virtual channel. Through this channel, you receive the message and then you decode the message. And that's and you receive it. And as the receiver, if we are talking together, you give me a feedback. So I say it, I encode it, send it, you decode it based on your perception, and then you answer me. So that's how the dynamic goes, right? That's kind of like a very objective way of looking at the structure of a conversation, just to keep it in mind that, oh, this is what I'm doing. Because it's such a natural part of our life that we never think about it as a separate object. Just a little bit of clarity on it. So how do we do it? When as the resource, I encode a message and send it through a channel, and you as a receiver start to decoding this, it's basically based on your interoception system. Your brain and your nerve system starts absorbing that message from the environment. It can be from my words and the tone of voice, the body gestures that I have, the way that I'm looking at you. So there are so many things involved. When you are decoding this message based on your perception, when your interoception system is doing that for you, it can decode the message, in a way that is a pleasant message or is an unpleasant message. Let's say like when you are very tired, when you are stressed, and then there is this one extra email come in and you read it and you feel it like a threat, like, oh, this person is just not cooperating. And then you put the email aside and you go and rest and kind of like freshen up. And a few hours later or a couple of days later, you come back to the email, you read it and you're like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. You see, when we are stressed, our nerve system decodes the message in a very different way. When we are relaxed and in a good mood, we decode the message in a different way. So it's based on really like how our body is and also our previous experience. If I talk in the tone of voice that is very assertive, it might not come as very pleasant to you. Your nerve system, based on the previous experience, might not decode it in a very pleasant way. But there are people who don't mind, even if like someone is talking with a stress, they have the experience and the mindfulness that like, they're like, oh, this person is mad, but they don't decode the message, taking it personally, that like, oh, he's mad at me. Even if the person is mad at them, it's not like, it doesn't shake that person. So it all depends on the previous experiences. If I have trauma with anger, then I can't definitely, even an assertive voice, not even an aggressive voice, can be pleasant to me. So it's very different. It's very unique the way that we receive and decode a message. That's what I want to say. I said it in a very long way. So what do we do when we have a conversation? Usually, like we call it like small talks. We just, exchange a little bit of information. Sometimes it's just like, just to pass time. And that's just like little conversations. Sometimes we talk about possibilities. Let's say like I am just exchanging information about the recent picnic that I did with you, and you're listening and you're exchanging your experience with me, and then we get to the possibilities. So our conversation goes to another level, that like now we are like, oh, you know what if actually we did a picnic together? So we are taking one level higher, and then I would say, oh, you know what? That actually Bull Run Park is a great place for a picnic. So we are now looking at the opportunities. And then you are like, would next Saturday work for you? So now we are taking actions. And then we are like, okay, the result is next Saturday, it works for me, it works for you, Bull Run Park, we like it, so we go there, just in a very simple way. But you see how a conversation can go to a different level or can stay there. It can stay at the conversation when we have small talks. It can stay at the possibilities when we don't go further. It's just to be aware of what is the level of conversation that we are talking about, especially in important conversations. This help us a little bit that, oh, I'm being mindful that I'm not looking for the results in this conversation. Let's just talk about actions that we have to take. Or I'm mindful that we don't even want to go further than searching for the possibilities. Let's just talk about the possibilities. So it's very important to see where we are as far as the goal of the conversation. And it can change, so it can be a moving target. Overall, being mindful about it, it usually brings more clarity. And then we have the speech act theory. Now, if you don't mind, I would like, before actually we go here, let's go back here. Do you have an example that you would like to share that, like, when you had a conversation recently, how did you go to different levels, or what level did you stay or move? Do you have an example that you want to share?
I'll share. I'll
Please.
share something sort of general. I'm Bevy. I know I'm being recorded, but so I turned my camera off. Anyway, one of my problems is that I start with results. So I guess, do we move up or down? I kind of lost you here. My actions and my possibilities get very confused. Sometimes I'm overly detailed. Also, I had early on, I thought I was going to go into politics. So see, this is an example of what happens. And so I took a lot of acting and to modulate my voice. So sometimes my voice is very loud and very precise. My speech is very precise because I also taught. So I'm not angry, and people think, oh, are you angry? Are you upset? Why are you so, hyper? So they start to focus on the delivery system, the voice, and they don't really, the message gets lost. So I have to be very conscious of my voice. And I do sometimes think that I need to give a lot of information, and I realize that's really more like for text or email, that when I'm conversing with someone, actually conversing, not leaving a voicemail, but actually conversing, that I kind of need to give as little information as possible so they can then respond. So for example, I have a friend who is a teacher. She's on vacation now, and I thought she would really like some of the classes offered at Fairfax, Virginia. So I sent her, this text that had a lot of information without even checking with her first if she was interested, So, and she was, but somehow she answered 3 or 4 of my questions, and I'm not really sure which one she answered. So all I want to do is have lunch with her tomorrow. But because I bombarded her with so much information, I'm not sure what she answered. So anyway.
Wow, that's a very great awareness, Devi. Thank you for sharing with us. It's like a self-observation and self-reflection to know where we are, how our way of communication is impacting others, and trying to figure it out, to see how we can make it, change it or make it different, to have a better communication. And that's exactly what we're talking about. It's like just being mindful of ourselves, because sometimes even if you are talking about possibilities, and like I said, or you mentioned too, that, you know, we like the tone of my voice can be just totally distracting, and we can't even go to the level of discussing the possibilities in the conversation. So what are those factors that can take us away from what we were, what the goal of conversation was? Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you don't like to talk about it, you can even have it in the chat, and I will answer in the chat. If you have any question, please feel free to do that. Thank you. So speech act theory. This is one version of it. There are thousands of versions of speech act theory out there. This is kind of like a very simple version of it, just to scratch the surface that when we are speaking, we are taking different actions. And that's another way to be mindful about our conversation. You know, am I requesting in my conversation, or am I promising, or I'm offering? If I'm requesting, I need to be clear. A lot of times we don't have the clarity when we are requesting something. So it's like in my head, I want to make sure that I'm requesting, or if you are hearing something unclear from the other party, we want to ask, are you requesting this? Is that what you are asking me to do? So it becomes more helpful when we try to bring that clarity. Sometimes I'm promising something, and what type of promise am I making? So I have to make sure, you know, a lot of time when we fall in the people-pleasing mode, we do promises that we would never even remember to act on it. So we have to be mindful about what we are promising and not over-promising. When we offer something, it's like basically making sure that what we are offering has a authenticity in it. And that's like, well, I'm offering this with clarity and authenticity. Or there is more to it if we are declaring something, you know, or the war is over, or like I pronounce you husband and wife, or, you know, a lot of declarations that we are, even in our normal daily conversations. Is this a declaration that I'm making? You know, am I opening or closing some possibilities? Because the way that if we declare something without having the other parties input in it, then we might really like close so many opportunities. So we have to be mindful about it. Sometimes we are assessing something, you know, like I can say, oh, what a gloomy day. And to my surprise, this morning, my husband said, oh, what a cozy day. We are both home and it's rainy and we're not going anywhere. And I was like, well, very different ways of looking at it. You know, my assessment was gloomy. His assessment was very different. We can accept that we have different assessments of life in our conversations and come to an acceptance to it. And sometimes we are just asserting the facts, you know, of like sun is rising, sun is setting, you know, it's like 50 degrees outside. Now, if I go to the assessment mood, I can say, oh, it's a cold day, and someone else can say 50 degrees, that's pleasant, that's beautiful. So the difference between what we say, what we offer in a conversation, we want to just like have a little bit more clarity on how we are, what act we are taking and how we are communicating in a conversation. Any question, any thoughts on the speech act theory, if you think about how it would how it would be in your actual conversations?
I really like this. This is wonderful. I had never actually heard of this speech act theory, but I've been taking a class. It's not counseling, it's communications, a couples communication class. And when I was taking it, when I started, I took it ostensibly to help me with my partner because he and I were fighting a lot. But I've noticed that the things we're being taught can really be applied to communication with anyone, you know, and they're teaching you, for example, a soft start, you know, if you're going to approach a difficult situation, something that would require that person to mull it over, you know, as he's walking out the door, that's really not the time to do it, you know, and you want, if it's something difficult, you want to make sure that you are at eye level with that person.
Mm.
And I also notice with friends, because nobody talks on the phone anymore, that there are some things that are more, can take on a different tone if they're delivered via email, as opposed to if they're delivered in person. And if they're delivered in person, they can be anecdotal, they can be lighthearted. And for example, my friends call me Bevy, but you know, obviously that's not my first name. But when I was a kid, my mother would use my first name and middle initial if she was angry at me.
Mm.
So now if someone uses that, I feel like they're angry. And a friend of mine had written some emails like that. And I was going to email her back. And I thought, no, I don't. So next time I saw her, which was like several weeks later, I said, oh, you know, you sent me some emails with my first name fully spelled out. I felt like I was being, and I said it like this, I felt like I was being punished by my mom or reprimanded. And
Yeah.
she said, oh my gosh, honey, you know, I'm just so quick. You know, as soon as I start typing the whole name, I didn't realize that. She said, I'll pay more attention. No, I wasn't angry. Had I written her an email, she may have gotten defensive. I don't know. But this is, you know, and also difficult things. But I like this, the declaration, the speaker opens or closes a possibility. This is definitely true with my partner and some of the difficulties we've had. He has also said that I need to give him time to just speak without me, you know, interrupting. So this is great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So thanks for sharing. I really appreciate it. Yeah, you bring up a lot of notes. Yeah, a lot of great points. Yeah, thank you. I don't know why I lost that. Oh, here there's. So the reason that I brought those are because, like I mentioned, we want to bring more clarity, more structure to our conversations, as hard as it is, because conversation is something that we constantly, it's a tool that it's like we constantly use it during the day in our daily lives. But we can bring more structure and more mindfulness to it with some practices. It's all about practice, right? We have some patterns, some habits, and then we notice that we can actually bring some more wisdom to it, and then we start practicing a new habit and a new pattern with the new wisdom in it. So what I'm suggesting here, it's basically like a checklist that you could use later and kind of like do a reflection of what did I do, what did I not do, in a very non-judgmental way, because you can take it as a learning practice just for a couple new habits that you can bring to your conversations. So there are so many points I'm going to talk about today, but you can see which one you connect to better and which ones are the ones that you could possibly pick to practice a little bit more. But it's, you know, when I'm talking and I'm conversing with someone, sometimes I feel like a lot better when the person is like, oh, you know what, I'm talking out loud. I'm thinking out loud. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I know where we are. Rather than it's like a completely well thought through sentence that she's offering. I'm like, okay, so I can take it easy because you are still working on it. It's kind of like a work in progress for you. So let's just take it not too seriously that, oh, this is what I think. I'm still thinking. So it really helps the connection and the understanding of both sides when we know what we are doing, what acts we are taking, and what the goal of the conversation is. Sometimes we derail from our conversation and we are like, oh, wait, I wasn't supposed to like talk about the actions that we are taking. We're just thinking about the possibilities. So it's important for us to bring it to have it, to keep it in our mind that what we are doing. And then another very important part of it is, of course, practicing attentive listening. Because when we talk to someone, attentive listening is not necessarily just let the other person go, because some people are verbal processors that they can't stop. But at the same time, when we are listening to someone, even when we don't interrupt, we are so lost in our own thoughts that, like, oh, I'm going to answer this, I'm going to answer this, I'm going to answer this. So I don't bring my entire presence to really listen to the other person, because I'm half lost in my own thoughts to reactions that I want to have to what you are saying. But if I allow you to talk and I listen to you wholly, that makes a very different communication and environment, that I'm like, oh, okay, now I really understand what you are saying. Or, you know what, I'm not sure, can you tell me a little bit more? Can you elaborate on this? It brings a very different dynamic to the conversation. Basically, instead of sitting here and listening to someone, thinking what I want to answer, sitting here listening with curiosity, that like, oh, I just really want to see what this person is saying. I really want to listen to words, look at this person and the body gestures and everything, and be fully present here, be very mindful about it, to see what comes out of this, of his or her talks, and how this conversation can move on. Another thing that we can kind of like be mindful about it is, instead of constantly giving advice or reacting in a conversation, could we ask questions? Sometimes powerful questions can bring so much more connection in a conversation. And it doesn't bring a lot of offensive feelings up. When you ask a powerful and thoughtful question, it makes the other person think, rather than a direct kind of like, I lost the word, like attack, or not even attack, like direct contradiction. It's like when you ask a question, you allow the other person to think about it, rather than a very direct contradiction. If people ask for our advice in a conversation, I always suggest that I should say, this is my experience, this is my personal experience, or this is based on what I studied in this place. Because my experience is very different than your experience. My perception is very different than your perception. We see the world very differently. So the suggestion that I can give, the advice that I can give, is not necessarily helpful for the other person, but it just can add another point of view. And we have to remember that we cannot force other people to accept our point of view or suggestion, because they may have a very different point of view. And in a conversation, we want to bring those out. We want to listen to it. We want to be able to talk about it. So a safe environment with questions, with curiosity, rather than suggestions, advice, or attacks even. that will close the environment for the conversation. What else we have here? Of course, focusing on the subject of the conversation is usually a very important thing, especially when we are in a serious conversation. But even, my child comes from school and I'm asking what happened, and then, she's explaining it to me, and I just I get distracted and I go to another, I ask a very different question, and I don't even allow her to explain what happened at school. So it's like very important that like, what's the intention of each conversation? And I know you would think like, how would I even do that? But with practice, we can really do it. And like I mentioned, even if we start with a couple of these points, okay, what is the intention? I want to focus on my conversation, or I want to become an attentive listener and just be curious and listen. So it's like, it's very helpful if we do it one by one or two by two, but in small steps, but they are really possible. In a conversation, we want to make sure that we are empowering ourselves and the other person, and myself and you, and it brings safety to the conversation environment, because we basically make that safe zone that here we are not against each other, even if we have contradictory thoughts and beliefs, or even if we are in this difficult conversation. The goal of the conversation is to get to a possibility, or even like a solution. It's not that I'm better than you or you are better than me. And that also takes me back to the point that we want to make sure that our inner critic doesn't kick in. Our inner critic can tell us, oh, I'm really better than you, or, oh my God, look, he is doing this to me, he's saying this to me, and I take it personally, and then I defeat myself. So that's why I'm like, we want to empower ourselves and the other person. When we try to do that with empathy, with compassion, curiosity, then we definitely allow ourselves and the other person to open up, to bring more to the conversation. And we allow each other to learn more about each other, if that makes sense. There are like a few more. Oh, okay. Yeah, so these are all about verbal communications. Any thoughts, any questions, anything you would like to share about what we just talked, anything you would like to do differently? I would love to hear it. Please, Bevi, yes.
Hi, I have a question about the avoiding flattering and silence, meaningful look, or quick acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is much more helpful than empty words. In the classes I've been taking recently about communication, particularly when one is broaching a difficult situation, it has, and particularly if you're doing an ask, if you're going to ask someone to alter their behavior, or note that you are dissatisfied with something, I've been told that it's a good idea to begin by saying, I understand when you come home from work, you're tired, and I really appreciate that you have been picking up the dishes. However, we have rats. I don't know. None of this is true. I'm just making this up. We have rats. That sounds horrible. We have ants. We have ants. Yeah, that we do have. We have ants, and if you leave, we have ants, and when the jam is left outside, I wake up to ants or something. So is it a good idea to start off with acknowledgement of what the person is doing, particularly if it's positive behavior that has already been altered to become positive behavior, or is it just better to get to the point?
The old version is like start with the positive, and then kind of like get to the point.
Right.
But I want to say like, what if you would start with some questions and oh, honey, did you forget to do this or something? To go to the point, but in a way that you make sure that you don't shame the other person. And I think that's coming up in the slides, but it's
Okay.
very important
Thank
that we ask in a way that, we bring the possibilities that like, did you forget or did, depends on the situation. But in a way that like, oh, I understand that you wanted to do it. I understand that you didn't mean to do it to disturb me or to hurt me. But what happened? That curiosity, if we can bring the curiosity without shaming the person, then why not go to the point? Because we don't want to, make it like shiny and a bow on it. We want to have adult conversation, but through compassion and curiosity. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. I'm thinking maybe the last 15 minutes of the session, we can starting so everyone can, if that's okay with everyone. So you might even feel more comfortable with all the questions and everything.
Okay, so you want me to stop recording in a minute?
What time is it?
Oh, wait, okay, so like at 3:15 or so, you want me to stop recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end of the, thank you.
Okay.
So there are verbal way of communication that we just talked about. We use the words and our cognitive ability to use the best words, and express ourselves in a conversation. And then there are nonverbal part of the communication. It's all about our body language. It's all about our tone of voice. Baby had this very good example of like, with the tone of voice, sometimes people actually just take it in a very, very different wrong way. And at the same time, it's like with the tone of voice, we want to make sure that when I'm requesting, sometimes I find myself to fall in that people pleasing style and mode. And then I'm like, oh, could you please? And, I don't have to do it. I can actually have a more respectful and assertive tone of voice without victimizing myself. But at the same time, when I'm apologizing, I want to make sure that I have this humble voice, tone of voice, or when I'm authentic, I'm not saying like just what, but sometimes, especially when we talk to teenagers, sometimes they're like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, are you really, can we have a different tone of voice with it? Even adults. So it's very important what type of tone of voice we choose rather than what comes up. We choose to have this tone of voice when we are talking to, different people in different situations. I remember I was at my sister-in-law's and I started talking to her dog with baby voice, and I'm like, oh yeah. And she was like, no, she wasn't being a good girl. Please don't talk to her in baby voice. So I was like, oh, I never talk to my dogs in anything other than baby voice. My dogs are very spoiled. But it was just like an automatic thing coming up for me. But then I was like, oh, I have to choose how do I want to talk to the dog, even to the dogs, and in our human conversations. So the tone of voice is important. What else is important is our body gesture. If I'm supposed to talk to you, if I'm telling you that, yeah, let's have the conversation, but I'm avoiding looking at you, I'm just like in my own little victimized posture, then I'm not inviting you to have this open conversation. I'm not opening that possibility for a safe environment to have this conversation, which can go back to am I confident enough or not? Because when I'm not confident, no matter what, the tone of my voice, the words that I use, the body language, it just all sends the message out that I'm not confident. Sometimes it's okay to say, I'm actually a little anxious, or I don't feel confident about it. And then when you say that, you give yourself a chance that maybe this is not a good time to talk about it. Maybe we can talk about it later. It's like allowing yourself to have a process. When we are in a conversation, we don't have to get everything done. It can be gradual, it can be deep, but in small portions. So it really depends on what we are doing, what the conversation is, when we need to end it. And through our body posture, our body language, and the other person's body language, we can learn a lot. We can see how the person is sitting. We can see how much the person is moving. It's like it can give us the opportunity to say, are you okay? Are we okay to continue this conversation? And sometimes we can observe, like I'm thinking like about something, I'm looking up, or I might avoid looking based on some research studies. It's not for everybody, but some people avoid looking at you when they are uncomfortable, or when they are shy, or when they don't want to talk about something. So we have to respect when we look at the body language of the other person. We can ask how they feel. We can ask if it's okay, if they want to continue the conversation. And when you are mindful about your body language and what's going on in your body, you can actually say that like, you know what, you may feel that like I'm just constantly doing this, or constantly shaking my legs, or moving, or looking at somewhere else. Then I know that like maybe if we stop, it's a good idea. Maybe if we change the subject, it's a good idea. So it's like, what's going on in my body? What emotions are rising because of my body gestures? Am I feeling comfortable? Am I present in this situation or not? And then we can decide. So it brings a little bit more freedom of how much a conversation can go on. When can we stop it? How deep we can go. Sometimes a conversation can go for hours and we don't even realize it. I'm like, oh my God, it's midnight. I didn't even realize it. And we just enjoyed the conversation and we even feel good about it, but being mindful about what's going on in our body, it helps a lot for a deeper, a richer communication and conversation. There's another research that I don't know if it's in this page or next page, but there's this other research that when we use our hands a lot, sometimes for some people, that means that they are thinking hard. So we could even ask, we could even, like think about it, and we could be easy on that person, because if the person is telling us with a body gesture that they are thinking hard, so we don't want to bombard them with words or with another question. We want to like slow down. So it's like, what pace do we want to have in our conversation? We can take it from our body gestures. We can really read it and see how it could modify our conversation at the moment. So we talked about these a little bit ahead of the time, and we talked about the tone of voice, environmental effects. Baby just had a very good question, a good example, like, when my partner is leaving the house, it's not the right time to bring up a very important topic or to start a conversation, because that person is set on leaving the house, going to work. Or let's say like we are in a funeral. There are certain topics that we can talk in a funeral, depends on the environment in the funeral. There are some of them that actually, people play games and they have like fun memories of the deceased. So it depends, but at the same time, or in a difficult conversation, we are sitting and then the TV is on and kids are screaming and playing and we can't even hear each other. So that's not the place for a very serious conversation. Or even going to a restaurant that has a very loud music. That's not the right place to have a serious conversation. We want to see what the environment offers and adjust our conversation based on that, or leave the environment for a different environment. And that includes these phones that we always have in our hands that distracts us from the other person. We want to put these aside. We want to be present, be at the moment. So environment is really important. Something that can help for some serious conversations, especially, is moving and walking, because when we walk, endorphin releases in our body and it makes us feel better about ourselves. And when we feel better in our own skin, it's always a good opportunity. It's always a good time to have a conversation with another person. When we are connected, when we are not in fight, flight, freeze, when we have the balance of our emotions and our logic between our nerve system and our brain, that's a good time to have a conversation if it's difficult, or any type of conversation. In fact, when we are stressed out, it's not the right time because we are not present, we are in survival mode. It's not the right time for offering a lot to other people. We definitely need to ground ourselves and focus on ourselves rather than to get engaged with other people that might even draw more energy out of us. So that's very important. But overall, walking and moving is important. So, when we talk to kids, they move a lot because that's how they are growing. That's how their nerve system is growing. It's like even if they are listening, we feel that they are not listening to us, but they are listening to us. But that's their way of, just moving around and constantly from change their location and everything, or touch something, is stimulating different sensories for them that it allows us to even be in a conversation, which is a very difficult type of, adult kids conversation. We are not even going there. But usually that's like an observation I have. Kids don't stay still for you to talk to them. So yeah, we talked about emotions and everything and tone of voice. Before we go to the tips and everything, any thoughts, anything you like to share, any question? We will have it at the end, but anything that you would like to share now? We will open it up at the end. So we have verbal communication type, non-verbal communication type. But at the end of the day, all of this together, being mindful about all of it, it's that we want to have a conversation that moves us to another step, either gives us joy or certainty or pleasant feelings and hope about the future or about the present moment. And like I mentioned, it's very important that when we have a conversation with another person, we don't shame that person. We ask the questions, we bring the points up, we say things in a way that the person is not at fault. Because you might think what if the person is at fault? Well, we all make mistakes. And if we allow the person to reflect on his or her own, rather than me shaming that person, if we open the environment to a reflective and safe environment, then that person gets the chance to think about the mistake that they made. But if we shame them, they just go more inward and we don't allow them to grow. And we just need to remember that when we make it, or even when I make a mistake, I don't want to allow other people to shame me. They're not allowed to do it, because I want someone who can have compassion and allow me to grow. We all make mistakes. Even some mistakes are repeated over and over, but the lesson repeats itself until it's learned. So it's okay to be assertive. It's okay to be direct. It's okay to request certain things, but it's really not okay to shame other people or to allow other people to shame us. It's one of the biggest things that I've learned in conversations and overall in the communication. It really opens a lot more possibilities for people to get deeper connections with each other. There are probably half of people who feel they are not good enough, and when they ask for, when they want to request something, they feel nervous. And there are other half of the people that they feel comfortable to ask requests. So the keeping the balance is very important. But just remembering that for many people, requesting something is a very anxiety-driven act. It can make them very nervous, and I'm one of them. So if I'm doing it, or if I'm seeing someone else is requesting, that's a very important point to keep in mind, that this person is putting a lot of effort to do this request. It's probably very stressful. So you bring more of the kindness and compassion to the whole conversation. Is there anything else here that? And at the end, I just highly recommend for practicing the thing, not going through everything, but, give yourself a few weeks. And when you have the conversations during the day, at the end of the day, or every couple of days, but regularly, go back maybe to this slide deck and see, what could I do differently, with no judgment, because you're learning? Or what did I do that I really liked to do? What did I do better today? What did I learn today? And overall, it becomes a new habit. It becomes second nature for you, for those points that you want to emphasize and to focus on. At the end of the day, these are all for bringing more richness to our life. It's for our own goodness. So if we have better conversations with other people, we bring more joy to our lives. And when we practice, it's not just because of my own self, it's because what I can offer to the life and what life can offer in response. I hope it was something like this, this little conversation slide deck was something that could help a little bit, bring a few points to you. If we want to we did talk about, this is, I usually add this. This is kind of like my signature slide I created. I designed this, that, like I said, we have current patterns, current habits, conscious or subconscious. They can be emotional patterns, somatic patterns, behavioral. And then we get to the point that we accept that our current pattern is something that we want to change. It's a limiting pattern, and it's because of a limiting belief. So we start to contemplating on it to see how we can create a new pattern for us, how we can change our old traditional belief, not traditional, but old belief system to the newer one, to have more compatibility with the complexity of the society. And then we practice it. We practice until it becomes a second nature, like what we just talked about it. And that's exactly when in this process, a life coach like me can help you to recognize your current patterns, the way that they're limiting you, and what would be the best new pattern, and then helping you to to basically like practice that and make it a new pattern in your life. Just a little overall pattern, a little overall process of change and growth. And this is my information. Adrian is always kind enough to share the slides with everyone. So please feel free to email me if you have any question. But at this point, I would like us, if it's okay, Adrian, if we could stop recording so we
Yeah,
can
sure,
open up to
sure.
come to questions. And I'm just gonna stop sharing so I can see everyone.
Okay, all right, I'll stop recording right now.
Thank you.